Welcome home to Tall Poppies, and this is the second half of our interview with the founders of Raptor Technologies, Carol and Allan. This is a very important interview for those who might be struggling with being in the dark places of being a startup or an entrepreneur. These two really made it happen for such a worthwhile cause, but they also maintain control through bootstrap startup to exit. It is really an inspirational story, and one for those who are also over 50. Allan was over 50, and this was his first true entrepreneurial endeavor. At the end, click like, and if you haven't clicked subscribe, please do, and hit the notification bell as well.
All these things,
Designing
she looked at
brochures.
me and she said, "My God, Carol, every job you've ever had, you're using in this job, in this company." And when I look back, that was definitely true. I mean, I was a secretary for years. I went to art school and studied graphic design. I did sales. I've always been a geeky, techie person. So I literally did all of that in our business. And I even ended up being the bookkeeper, and I had done that for a small business at one time. So all these things, I ended up using it in our company. So it was just weird. I mean, because my life took all these very strange, bizarre turns, but that's your stepping stones.
Right.
And it allowed me to focus on sales and relationships and go forward.
Freed you up, yeah.
And eventually we outsourced a lot of that stuff that she had to do because it was going to kill her.
Yeah. And also you couldn't afford her if you had to pay her.
But then in the evening we'd go home, and then we could talk about what I did and what she had done that day. But then
So
get
you
up the
kept
next
each
day.
other in the loop, and
We did.
then you could see how each other's roles really fit into the whole.
So a true mom and pop that made it to the top. That's a terrible line, but I'm sorry
Made
you
it
said
to the
that.
top. Yeah.
But
There's a t-shirt there.
you know, to get there, and most people have to go out and borrow money, and we did not want to give up any part of the company. We did have some early on investors that I gave a window of 18 months to move the product, and they couldn't figure out how to move it, so they were gone.
Okay.
So we maintained.
Did you ever dilute did you bring in any other partners before exit?
No.
Gee, wow.
Yeah.
So as you were scaling up so rapidly, did you have to get resources or help from offshore regarding?
No.
No.
I was so in debt with American Express that I would go around the country, and I'm traveling, and they say, your limit's, $3,000. And I said, well, I'm on the road, so we'll move you up to $4,000. Well, before long, they were moving us up to.
Oh my gosh! At one time, we had balances $150,000, $200,000 a month because we put everything from the company on there. So we went from, life being really slim to, suddenly, we've got our own person at
We had our own American Express agent by the end of the thing.
So what was the time? I mean, it was from being at the very worst to when you're actually chunking the money into the account. What was that time period?
We had to, we had a lot of, like I said, we had a lot of debt and had to pay off a lot of stuff. And so when we first started for a long time, we were afraid to take bonuses or
Wouldn't take anything
much
out.
of a salary at all.
Right.
And so when things were finally to where we could get bonuses, we might get $10,000 or $20,000, and I'd say, oh, gosh, it would be so much fun to spend this, but I have to pay off that credit card. So every bonus went to the credit cards till one day we wrote a check to pay off our mortgage for $100,000, and I thought, oh, that feels fantastic.
Our
That
CPA
I knew things were going to be good.
The CPA actually had to tell us, Carol and
You need
Allan,
to take some
you
money."
have to take some money out of the account. And I go, what about payroll? What if I can't make payroll? 10, 12, whatever he had at the time, people. And he goes, you're fine, but you're hanging on because
You're so
you've
used
been
to
that old
being,
place.
hand to mouth. When things start going well, you're not quite sure how to act. But
Never been there. Never.
Yeah.
luckily we...
And what a good, explain more about that for people, because everyone wants to be in that position. They think, oh, that would be a good problem to have. But, there is a period of adjustment for that, because it does seem
Well,
surreal.
and you could be really stupid And
Very
back
quickly.
when we were making decent money as salespeople, we were pretty stupid with money.
With other companies, yes.
But when it's your own skin in the game.
Right.
Much different view.
Yes, we had already made all those dumb mistakes by the time we started really making money, and we had to pay the penalty of paying off those credit cards and that debt that we had. And so from there on out, we just didn't do anything without paying cash.
So this is really interesting because a lot of people now are talking about when you start a company, you really should go out and, pitch your deck to angel investors and to, VC and, to friends and family. So it's really nice to, it's really refreshing to see some people that actually are just financing themselves. And so what
You don't always have to give it away. We were lucky that our company, people were writing checks right away.
Mm-hmm.
So
if we just started
which is
this,
testament to
Right.
the value creation of your concept. I mean, it really states to an untapped need that they didn't know that they needed this until you
Right.
actually came up.
And we didn't have to we didn't have to spend a lot of money
No.
to run the company, and that was part of the deal. We could start with very little
Because you didn't need a
expenditures.
showroom, you just needed,
Right.
Yeah,
you
we
needed
we
to.
figured out how to work the
So-
media like a horse, because local media, they don't
Oh,
they don't
wow.
have anything.
That was-
a paper bag blows down the road, they're going to do a story on it. So if a school district's putting this in, and we learned that we worked them like a horse all across the country.
Well, you didn't really need to
When
work
Allan
them.
really, I think
Figured
that was
out
the
how to
very,
do that.
yeah, the very first time we were on the news, and let me tell you, we were on the news a lot. The very first time I think it finally clicked with Allan, I've got to call more of these reporters, and he called another lady who was on our local Channel 2 who had a segment called Family First in the mornings, and she said, I'll give you 5 minutes. He came over there and talked to her, and the next thing you know, we were on there, and our phone was ringing like crazy. So we started realizing local news.
And why were you why were you in the paper or the media for the first time?
Because schools were putting our system in.
Okay.
So they would do a story about this school putting in the system
Because it
that
adds
screened for
value
registered
to the
sex
school.
offenders.
Correct.
Yeah. So the topic of that was such a hot topic, and there was unfortunately a lot of high-profile cases involving sex offenders in the country. So anyway, I looked at one time. I was, since I used to maintain our website, I was always putting up the news articles and the videos and so forth of us being on the news. And about every other week, on the average, we were in the news somewhere.
Really?
Yeah.
That's driving it really hard then.
If we would have done this in my early 20s, it would have never made it.
Yeah, because of the.
I didn't have the experience, I didn't see. Fortunately, in sales, working for other companies, and I did very well. I was always a high performer. That on my own back then, without that experience, I don't think I could have taken this, or we could not have taken this and made it as successful as it was.
So also back in 20s, we didn't have the internet, or we didn't have that rapid response time, which is part of the attractiveness of Raptor Technologies. So we've got a little Raptor here. So we all love Raptors. So, and this one has a little movable. So I've got this here for you to help us explain why you chose.
Help me.
Eat me, or help me. So.
I think Carol can explain best, because she actually came up with the name one evening.
We were chatting with someone the programmer, the developer who was going in with Allan to start the company, or they were gonna leave their present employment, and so we just started. And I said, "What about Raptor Technologies?" Because what's the
Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Jurassic Park
Was on in the
quite
background.
popular, yeah. And I said, the raptor to me was the coolest dinosaur. So we started thinking of all these names of products or whatever that we could have that would relate to that whole, dinosaur thing. But anyway, the funny thing is, everyone remembered the Raptor name. So it was just a quick thing, but for whatever reason, it was something everybody could remember. It just happened to be one of those names that people would remember.
So was it the ferociousness that you think just helped drive their brand?
Yeah, I think he was.
The name was cool.
Yeah.
The name was cool, and then the logo. Didn't you create the first logo?
I did create the first logo.
It was really cool.
And the kids loved it at the school, and then we
Did you think it make them feel safe? Just
because the national
most kids love
conferences, we used to buy Raptor shirts for all the kids, and the
Oh my
competitors
gosh.
hated it because they're all running
all the kids are running around with our shirts on. It was good.
Even the kids are the competitors.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just love to beat the hell out of those people. But, I love a
There's
good
nothing
fight.
like healthy competition.
That's right. Oh yeah.
It was good. We were well hated by our competitors
Yes.
because we were always doing something cool.
We had one good friend out of the Boston area. He was a nice guy.
He was a nice guy. Is a nice guy.
He is a nice guy, but he only owned like 10% of his company he was working for. And I'd have other ones want to join in with us. And I'd say, well, how much do you got? They go, I own 15%. I'm going, I've got the whole thing here. We're either going to sink or swim.
And that's a part of that self-responsibility. It's so. Why do you think you were different from even these other entrepreneurs in that regard?
Well, I don't know.
I think
no college education here.
Yeah.
A year and a half, 2 years of college. Carol didn't do any university studies.
But you sound like Gary Vee. I mean, he's talking about successful people. I mean, have to work, as he says, work their face off. And it's not going to come to you.
Well, college is fun. College is fun, but it's not making you any money.
Well, it's totally appropriate for particular career paths. But where I come from, back in the day, very few people went to university. People went into they went either straight into work or they went into apprenticeships, but they were still very viable. And nowadays we've got friends who are doctors who are encouraging their sons to go into the trades, which 20 years ago would have been totally unheard of. But now they see that here are these kids who are making more money or as much money as a doctor at 28. These are kids at 28 making more money as a doctor would at 36, and with no college debt, and having self-determination. So I think that it's really quite a remarkable turnaround where it's, and Seth Godin's Alt MBA is a prime example of this intense on-the-job functionality. And, there is, of course, a place for MBAs and, higher education, of course. But I think that a lot of people are very intimidated and don't go into business or entrepreneurship for themselves because they think that they have to have an MBA. They think that they won't get credibility from the money guys, and you're proving that you don't need the money guys.
Not necessarily. And honestly, I think there's a lot of businesses, there's a lot of positions where a college degree isn't really going to teach you anything. There are companies and bosses who like you to have a degree because they want to know that you can think, you can complete a 4 years or more with a goal. But there's a lot of things it's just not going to teach you. And when I went into the business world, I went in as a secretary, but every chance I got, when I learned everything I could learn about my job, I was looking for another job where I could learn more and make more money. Because as a secretary, I was only going to get 3% a year raise, maybe, and I wasn't making any money.
But it sounds like you still had a sense of your own value because you were
Absolutely.
You were still moving a trajectory.
And this really drove my dad crazy because he was 41 years with the same company, so he never understood. Why are you leaving? I'm like, Dad, I want to make more money, but you're making good money. So, I knew that I was only going to learn more if I found a job that would teach it to me.
So I have a question for you. So you have these kids that go to college and, they learn even the most relevant and useful subject, but they've got this debt. Do you think that makes them, and they allude to it in the book Hustle, that they become renters of their own life because they are actually beholden to situations because they're needing to pay off the debt? And so that's somewhat of a constraint to being, individual endeavors or having the courage, because if you're sort of burdened with that.
I will say that debt is going to affect everything in your life in a negative way. You can't possibly be free to create, to take risks, to do all these things that could take you different places if all you've got to concentrate on making money to pay off that debt.
Although, do you think debt could be possibly a good thing, where if you frame it as the impetus to just not fail?
It's going to depend on the person.
Yes.
I don't like debt.
Who does? When you have to be responsible to take it over and on, and then you want to sort of, well, you need to, because of the character traits, you're going to pay that off. It can actually be fuel that.
It can for some people.
But because you guys had to take on debt, but it wasn't college debt and then debt starting up a business.
Right.
So,
we just we had debt just from being stupid. We were stupid for, like I said, with other positions, and it was tough.
So I have a question. So if you'd started your own, and you started your own business earlier on with your photography business and your dojo, but do you think if you'd started your own business in your late teens, early 20s, and learnt the consequences of debt, do you think that would have been as valuable as anything else that you could have learnt in life, along with the actual?
I don't think being young, I don't think you have enough discipline to really understand that all of it can go away at any time. That was the big thing with us. We knew that money could stop at any point. So we didn't want to go, we could have easily ignored our debt because we had money coming in and just started paying cash for things or whatever, and not paying off the debt. But we were so afraid at any time the gravy train would stop, and the money would be all dried up.
So it's like a self-imposed discipline, or was it, the debt itself created a discipline that you had to?
I think so.
There was only maybe 3 employees when we sold that had socked the money and kept putting it away, and the rest of them took their 401ks, their defined benefit programs, and they went and cashed them all in. And say it was $100,000, and they ended up with what, 60, and they blow through that. And I see what they're doing today, but the ones that stayed with us are still our friends. They put that money away, they're raising their families, and I feel good about them.
Oh, that's awesome. So so the kids that sort of just blew it all away were sort of like mirrors of you when you were younger?
Probably.
Yeah, I don't
somewhat.
want to admit that, but yeah, because I blew through my first 401k.
Oh my gosh, how many 401ks
Carol
did I have?
Carol started a company.
I did have a little company at one time.
And we took my 401k money and put it into that, if I remember right.
Oh, I remember I got a small business loan.
Yeah, I think that's after we blew through my 401k. But
Oh, well, but I did get a small business loan, and basically that was a bad idea, but I had to pay that off too. So it was one of those things.
It was way ahead of its
We've
time.
always paid our own way.
It was a web-based application, and at a certain time, people didn't understand the web.
What I was doing was I tried to create a website to sell advertising. So it was sort of like a Yellow Pages, only it was for upscale shopping, dining.
And when was this?
Beauty salons. And so this was, what year was that?
90-something.
96?
So it was just
97.
about to take
97.
off.
I know we had ISDN lines at the time.
Yeah, we didn't have high-speed internet. We had dial-up.
Two 1440s, we were high speed at 28.8. And we had like 8-10 lines coming into this little house. It was insane. We were way
a lot of people I
way ahead of our time.
would talk to would say, well, I don't need a website. I
But it
really
looked like,
remember
but it seems
people
like
actually
you were
saying
keeping your eyes open for what was out there and what was
we
needed.
We were on our way. We just didn't know it.
Yeah.
We had our, it was
We
coming.
didn't know how to get there, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
We didn't know that road yet.
So so you've got this confluence of this past experience, and it doesn't seem like it dampened your entrepreneurial spirit. So when you came up with Raptor, it just really fed into that incredibly deep need to, if the kids aren't with me, we just need to make sure that they're okay.
And make the parents feel better when they're at work or whatever. The mother knows if there's an issue that the school is doing something. And we kind of shamed most schools into it, because if one school had it and the parent's kid went from elementary to junior high, they'd say, why don't you have a visitor management system? And then if a teacher left that school district and went to another school district, they'd say, why don't you have Raptor? So
Well, the thing is, when you're talking about the sign-in,
organically growing.
I mean, a lot of the times, if someone's away from the desk and you just sign in and they're supposed to have someone there, you know, yours, you actually had to swipe a driver's
ID
license.
the first time,
right,
yes.
so you've actually got some validation of
exactly who that is.
who that is.
Correct.
It's not a fake or...
Yeah, they could write any name in the book.
Totally, right.
But there are school districts in Texas that had a lot of Hispanic people come in, and they would create an ID for them. So there was no validation of who this person was.
So that doesn't mean to say that you know that person is a registered sex offender.
They could be a murderer. They could be anything.
Right.
And, you know, a more liberal school district has more liberal applications. And what we learned as we built the company was by starting in Texas, we're very strict. That's a very, I guess, conservative state. Then we found Florida, which was the same way. When I went west, I headed into California, pushback. I said, okay, I'm not going to waste my time.
What was the pushback there?
The privacy issues, we don't need this. Maybe familiar with Crossing the Chasm, the book Crossing the Chasm.
Right.
Laggards to the other end of the scale. And if you catch people who are laggards, you have to teach them. It takes too long to teach them how this technology is going to work.
Right, you go back.
You got to find the innovator.
The 80-20 rule.
Correct.
Yeah, right.
Find the guy who likes all the new toys and new phones and everything.
The 20% guy that's going to give you 80%
Correct.
of the business. Yeah.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up here, what advice do you want to give to people who, you know, want to start a new venture, who may happen to be 50 and plus? What would you say?
I'd say, you know, if you want to do it, just keep going and do it. I can't tell you it's going to be easy, and I can't tell you you're going to make it. And I don't think your odds are any worse than a 20-year-old doing it.
Well, I have to share with you that there was that TED talk with that, I forget the chap's name, and he shared a statistic that 70% of businesses started by people over 50 succeed, whereas 70% of businesses started by people under 30 fail. So actually the capital guys really should be looking at those of us who are over 50 and get serious about that, because we've been around the block, we know what works, what doesn't work.
Definitely, I think,
And we've got the money.
That's
older
right.
people have more experienced people
Yes.
have discipline that you don't have when you're young. But anyway,
What would you do?
I don't think age matters. I mean, gosh, I know
I think
we have
it's a benefit.
friends that are in their 70s still working and going strong and starting new ideas, and yeah, it doesn't really matter how
It's a
old you
muscle
are.
that you flex.
Once you give up, you give up.
That's good
Yeah.
for you.
know.
Was it Ray Kroc said, once you're ripe, you're rot?
That's right. It's true line.
Well, as you're not going to go off into the sunset, because you're both starting up and restarting your photography, and you're going on this. Her art is just beautiful. So if you might want to leave, we'll get your website and follow her development as an artist. It is truly spectacular. You're already selling, and hopefully going to be showing some series of art soon. It really is, because we actually met at a art class, and it was really quite fun. And then to see you just go off like that. So hope to see you both, follow you both as you go off into these new ventures that you've really well deserved. And thank you for creating Raptor Technologies. And if you're in a school district or any other company that really could benefit from Raptor Technologies, visit them.
Look 'em up.
Look them up and use them. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Oh, it's a joy. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for watching the video. I know that you're excited in following these people. Hit like, hit subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And we look forward to hearing from you and seeing you in your journey too.